And we're live on the Camera Adjusty Metal Lab. And as always, we are brought to you in part by hcrealms.com. Check out the shop section. Check out some cool Heroclix related paraphernalia. And while you're on your way out to that checkout button, always remember to type in the coupon code MARRIED for 10% off of your purchase. As well, we are also brought to you in part by Majestic CCG. And always check out the majesticccg.com/apex-insiders. For their premium membership site. $3 a month gets you access to articles written by some awesome authors, including Mike Payne of our show, Easton Brock, Paris Gordon, Patrick Iboko, many more, and some not so good, including myself. I've actually just recently put up an article regarding the benefits of being part of one of these Heroclix teams. In addition to which, we are brought to you in part by hcatlas.com, where you can get, for $25 a month, you can get an awesome subscription to awesome monthly custom maps. Gettysburg went out last month. This month is going to be the Nashville Zombie Apocalypse. So check it out, again, hcatlas.com. Subscribe. For $25 a month, you get really cool maps with those really neat vinyl-like neoprene material that they're made of, and that's Wesley Summers, who we had on the show a couple weeks back, was talking about those. With that all in hand, if you want to support us directly, check us out, patreon.com/marriedwithclicks. We now officially are required to make this money where your mouth is matches. So guys, watch how you talk to each other, because you might have to put your money where your mouth is. Thank the Patreons for that. With that said, I want to introduce the crew. Thank you very much for joining me, Tom.
Thank you. Good
Mike.
to see you.
Buongiorno.
And Jay.
I will fight each and every one of you.
That's a clear thing to say.
He wants to put his money where his mouth is.
Ring the bell.
All right, so I do want to start with a semi-casual note, but it is also part of a test round that happened this past weekend. Jay and Tom had the pleasure of enjoying the Married with Clicks test round of the all-common format that we're looking to put into, having mentioned the Patreon already. So I wanna hear what you guys have to think about it, and then Mike, after they talk, tell me if your predictions of it were correct. So Tom, let's start with you, sir.
I thought it was great. We were talking about it on the car ride home as to whether or not we felt that there was any way to improve on the concept. Do you want to explain what the concept was in some detail?
The idea in my initial head was get rid of the argument of the pay-to-win, because, okay, so some teams are expensive. Time to put your lack of money where your mouth is and build with only characters that everybody basically has. So I allowed only non-prime commons, the flat rarity gravity feed characters, and when I say non-prime commons, commons from like Avengers Age of Ultron, the countertop display sets, also apply. Anything modern legal, basically, that is common, as well as gravity feed flat rarity figures, so that any of those 10 set figures that came as part of other starter set figures and Fast Force figures, and that is all that was allowed. No ATAs, no special objects. You were allowed to have a theme team, that was cool, but ultimately I just didn't really allow anything extra that could with some ambiguity, be considered common, but I just didn't want there. So yeah, that was the idea. The idea was to put the figures on the board and tell me what tell me that you don't actually, or you think this game is pay to win. So with that said, Tom,
all right.
Talk about your team, talk about your experience.
Okay, well, my team consisted of the Silver Sable common from the Deadpool set, she being the one that costs 100 points, has a cool leadership effect, and most particularly, and for the purposes of this tournament, has the wildcard Spider-Man ally team ability, and a trait which says that adjacent friendly characters that share a keyword with her can can use whatever team ability she is copying. So the idea was to build around that to try to get a variety of different team abilities that will work. Mike has heard a concept akin to this because I played a test team that I was just preparing for a general limited format against him, and it worked quite well, and I wanted to see if I could make a modified version that would work only using common figures, since I noted that the Hydra recruits and the Silver Sable were already commons, and so I wanted to use that to dovetail off. And I did not exactly succeed. I came up with a team that I thought was cool, but it definitely didn't work nearly as well as the non-all-common version. I don't think I would play it again given the option. The rest of the team was 100-point Scarlet Witch from the AVX starter set. She provides both the Avengers and Mystics team abilities, which are highly useful, of course. She also has the ability to say no more mutants or whatever and take away other people's team abilities, and it's never a bad thing to have prob support and perplex on your team, along with precision strike and decent range at 8. The shield bodyguard was on the team. At 35 points, he does not share a keyword, so he doesn't get to enjoy the sharing that other people do, but he does give an 18 defend on his second click and brings the shield team ability for the general sharings. So between the shield team ability, which is always useful, and the 18 defend pumping up people's defenses, it does make it a little bit of a harder unit to hit. And surrounding the Scarlet Witch, or rather, I should say Silver Sable, were 3 Hydra recruits at 20 points, all of them giving ability whatever she is borrowing. So most of the time when I was on the offense, I could use both the shield and the Hydra team abilities. When the time came to deploy the team, then everybody just copied Avengers, and everybody could take their move actions, and it wouldn't count towards my total for the turns. And then at the end of the turn, everybody would swap over to Mystics, so that they all provided some feedback if they were being targeted, and otherwise they stood there to block line of fire. So it was a good concept, but in the end, there was no stealth busting whatsoever, and that was definitely a loss because I happened to face several stealth characters. And I won't go into detail about every round. I went 1 and 2. I got completely smoked in one of the rounds, and I had a very tight game that I lost and a fairly tight game that I won. So it was competitive, but not fantastic by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely the absence of move and attack and the absence of stealth busting between the two caused some serious delays. So I may still work with my non-common version of that team, but the all-commons one wasn't the success I would have hoped it would be. But all the same, I thought it was a really cool concept for a tournament. I absolutely loved the setup, and as I was starting to say before, we talked about it in the car on the way home and tried to say, what would we change? And to be fair, I don't think I would really change anything. There was some discussion of should the common primes be allowed. They are commons, after all. I mean, they're white in the back of their card. But they're hard to find. And if the entire idea is to support that it's not pay to win, then excluding the primes really does make a lot of sense. I think that's clever. I think it's a good, smart thing to do. So while obviously the absence of the primes were felt, considering there are a lot of good common primes, I think it was the right call. And allowing starter and fast forces figures to be included spread out the board well. Because if it had only been commons from main sets and gravity feeds, I almost feel like it would be too restrictive. Still fun, but I like the idea of just including everything. So that was my experience. I had a good time, and I thank you for running it. It was fun.
No problem. All right, Jay.
Well, I was going to ask what Tom played against in the rounds.
Oh, that requires me remembering. In the first one, I played against a Dire Wraith Queen, I believe. It's not Dire Wraith. What is it? Or is
the red one is the non-queen. The green one is the queen.
Yes, I played against the queen, along with a Wonder Woman from the new Superman set, and the Shame from the Batman Classic, and it was a very cool little team actually. And what was neat is that he took to targeting the Hydra recruits early on with the Dire Wraith Queen, who can then use powers they can, and so using that to take advantage of the fact that they've got willpower, and then later also taking advantage of, I can't remember now what it is.
Enhancement, sidestep.
Maybe it was the sidestep I was thinking of, to just give her some more mobility, and she became very annoying. I took out Wonder Woman quite quickly. At least I took Wonder Woman down significantly, and then he kind of ran away with her to deny me the points. And then Shane got in there. He did some damage, but took damage in return and got taken out. The Brood Queen was very, very annoying, Dire Wraith Queen was very annoying and hard to take out. It just took a long time. In the end, I did take out this whole team. It just took an awful lot of doing without moving attack, because once he moved Wonder Woman away, I had to go the long road to catch her. In my second round, I played against the guy who wound up on to win it, which he was playing the 150-point Iron Man common, which I was sure I would see, so I did, along with Captain America at 65 points, that being, or rather 50 points, my apologies, that being the one from the Age of Ultron Fast Forces, and the Ant-Man from the Age of Ultron regular set, as well as the Wasp for the Fast Forces, and that was very much extend out his swing, turn him into a giant, give him enhancement, and make Iron Man just a beating machine. And he was able to take it at Silver Sable in one shot. Once you do that, my team doesn't have much left. And then in the third round, I played against a Shield team that consisted of both Captain America and Black Widow dual team ability pieces from the Captain America Winter Soldier set, along with a Shield Paranormal Investigator and a Shield Recruit. And he used stealth to good effect, and I also tried to do the same where I could. We fought back and forth. It came down to Scarlet Witch against Captain America, and Captain America won. So that was a tight battle and a hard-fought one that nearly went time. So it was fun, but the stealth factor was a big detractor for my team. There you go.
All right, Jay.
Did you notice any patterns in particular?
Within the tournament or within the games?
I meant within the tournament in general.
I don't know that I honestly did, or at least I didn't notice patterns I would have expected to see. Did you?
Saw some patterns, yeah.
I mean, I expected to see more Iron Man, but I didn't.
Saw a fair amount of strategies that were common, at least in the top four for sure. A lot of common stuff there. Not so much figures, it's just concepts.
Okay.
But I will get to that.
How about you lead on with your story there, Jay? Because it's your turn.
Oh, I get a turn?
Yeah.
Okay. I played Bucky at 45 points, Agent Ward at 55, the 75-point Black Widow from the Captain America Winter Soldier starter, 75-point Hawkeye from the Age of Ultron movie starter, and 2 Atomicas for a clean 300 points. Spy theme, +6 rolls, pretty good. And then the maps I brought were the Spider-Man team-based Xavier map, the AVX Savage Land map, and the Black Mercy. My round 1 was against a gentleman whose name I don't remember, who I think is a regular at the Comic Warehouse, who was playing the Hawkeye Common from Avengers Assemble with potential 14 range. Was semi-expecting to see him there, and it was a pretty awesome figure. What else? Star Labs Tech, Accountable, and the Barry Allen Flash from the Flash Gravity feed. So I ended up winning map roll, put us on Savage Land. I moved out a bit, he moved out a bit. I let him get the swing to get his Accountable to use his outwit, I believe, to be able to pick him off. And then I killed him. Hawkeye got a shot him with his 14 range. Barry Allen came in, swinging. Didn't have the best success in his dice rolls, especially after my 2 probs. And it ended up being that he took out my Hawkeye, who was the source of giving stealth busting. Was it my only stealth busting, in addition to him giving it to my Bucky. So then he ended up with basically his Hawkeye and stealth. I had no way to ignore his stealth, and then the way the map is, it's kind of hard to... all that water, not so much improvement on the team. I had to catch up to him. But it ended up being that I believe I took his whole team, and he took 140 or so. So that was not as good as I would have wanted for the first round, but it was pretty good considering the swarm factor and having to manage my actions and all that in the number of actions I was allowed. Round 2, I faced Nuno, a friend of mine and Jason's, who played the team that Tom was round 3.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of really surprised by all the stuff that I had, like Hawkeye having traded running shot and just all my stealth busting and all the things that I did. His dice were also not the idealist, and ended up not losing any figures there and taking his whole team fairly quickly. That round. Oh, and the great thing about that team, one of my favorite things, was that he had the Captain America, who has the no initiative bonus for your opponent. So that was pretty cool. And he actually managed to get map roll, even with my +6 hypothetically. Round 3, I faced Jimmy, who won the November 1st Win a Map, who was playing Gravity Feed Daredevil, Star Labs Tech, Robert Kelly, Fast Forces Karnak, I can't remember how many points,
100.
and okay, fair enough, and Lockjaw 25.
Yep.
What happened? I think I won map, obviously, with my +6 to his +0. Pick Shadowland again, because the way the map is, it's like has like each starting area is elevated, and then there's elevated in the middle. So I figured that with my potentially getting +3 to Hawkeye's 8 range, I can be on that elevated, and then nobody can go anywhere that's out of my range, even if they're in their starting area. So I moved up a bit, he moved up a bit, I shot a bunch of his figures, including Daredevil, who ran back to get healed by the Star Labs tag. I managed to shoot him from really far, and then he didn't get it. I don't think he got any Super Senses rolls, which was unfortunate. Although he got some 4s, because that's the Daredevil that succeeds on a 4 through 6 if a character is within range that's attacking, but he only got a 4 when I was attacking at too far of a range. That kind of sucked for him. Ended up winning that with full points. So then I ended up in the top 4 in the number 1 spot. Ended up with 899.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't bring my Bane. I didn't bring any figures that give plus additions to victory points. So I was just at normal victory points that time. Then there was the cut, and then round 1 in the top 4 was me against Patrick, who was playing Patrick Chow, who was playing the 150-point starter set Thor from Age of Ultron, who has the full movement charge Quake, Justice from Avengers Assemble, as well as the same Hawkeye I was playing, the 75-point one. The way I saw it, did I win? I won map roll that game. So the way I saw it, he just completely outswung me, so I just had to let him get the first hit in, which was basically what happened. And he hit my Hawkeye for a fair bit of damage, which was kind of unfortunate, but overall my Hawkeye managed to pull through and get his fair amount of damage. So ended up going back and forth for a bit. I ended up barely managing to KO his Thor because I managed to get Tomika on her second click with her Tenant exploit to actually manage to kill 150-point Thor, which was amazing. And at that point, it was his Justice and Hawkeye versus my Black Widow, who was damaged, and an Atomica. I had 2 Atomicas, but one of them was in hindering. It was not able to move out of there fast enough, and I could only carry one with Black Widow. So since we were on the Savage Land map, I figured I had literally no choice other than to run back to my starting area and make him have to shoot at me, because unlike my Hawkeye, his didn't have the advantage of 3 uses of the shield team ability. So I went back to my starting area in the little corner so that he had to come to me if he wanted the points. Which he did end up doing instead of taking his lead of 225 to my 200. At that point, it was his
150.
Yeah, I took 250 at that point. He had taken 200. So he could have taken that and just been done there. But for whatever reason, decided to come to me, which is it's a decision one would maybe want to make if they don't want to just sit there for the whole hour or don't want to win on that kind of thing. Although that would be fair play to him, considering that I was the one that ran away. But of course, I had no choice because I would have just gotten shot.
Mm-hmm.
So he ended up coming to me. I managed to actually pull through and get KO both of his guys, which was especially. It was good because I had that Hawkeye is not one that can shoot in or out of adjacency, so I managed to tie him down with plasticity to make his awesome range not matter. Because at that point, both my Black Widow and Atomica had plasticity, so I managed to tie him down, and then just managed to KO his team from there. So surprising pull through in the end. Although had I lost that round because I took points, and I believe the other round Aiden took none, I would have ended up in third. So that would have been okay. But then I ended up in the top 2, and I had nothing on Aubrey's team. None of my maps could help. It's just that team was just super special, awesome. I couldn't do anything.
I want to second that with, you're not the only one with that answer.
In addition to my not taking any points from him, he didn't give away any points the whole tournament, so it wasn't so bad. But just his swing and his yo-yo ability and his all that stuff.
Yeah.
I won map roll, but just couldn't do anything to him.
Absolutely. So, with that said, before
I was gonna say that I've got this thing.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Second place.
I won this thing.
A black monitor.
Yeah, and then he got the brick. Yep. So that was cool. And then what was it? Aiden was third and got Necron, and then Patrick was fourth.
And got a $25 gift certificate to Amazon.ca.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yep. So, and this is something I like, is if the prize is big, I want everybody to get a chance at it. I want players to kind of prove their way, and that was the goal. I've only heard one suggestion from 3 different people, one of which is actually on the show, and we talked about it after the show. And I kind of stay firm on keeping the starters and fast forces on it. I'll explain it some other time, but I do want to get Mike's chance in there. And from this point, what I want to do is say, Tom, Jay, you were there. What were you expecting to see and didn't see? And what were you surprised to see when you were there? So I'll let Tom start with that.
I think more than anything else, I just expected to see more of certain things as opposed to such a variety. As I said, I expected to see more of that Iron Man common. I expected to see more Green Arrow. There was Green Arrow, but again, I expected to see more of it. I actually thought that I wouldn't be the only one doing Silver Sable potentially. She is cool in that way. And I thought that I was almost certain at least one person would just bring 300-point Age of Ultron Hulk and just come tearing across the field, which no one did, I don't think. So I guess more than anything else, if the question is what did I expect to see, or there isn't a lot. To be fair, to be honest, there wasn't a lot that I saw that surprised me as such. There were teams I wouldn't have thought of myself, but because of the fact that I didn't personally see a lot of trending, I saw a little bit of overlap here and there, and I may have just missed it. It may have been there and I didn't see it, so don't take that for any more than it's worth. But from my perspective, rather than there being a dominant strategy that emerged quickly, there was a wide variety of different ideas that people came to the table with. And so in that way, I think it's excellent. I love that conceptually. And I wonder whether that would hold given more opportunities. Because generally speaking, either trends immediately form and then splinter because people start building against it, or trends take a little while for certain things to rise to the top and then they become the trend. I mean, that is kind of always the way it goes, right? There's either a lot of different stuff that coalesces into certain things that gets counter-built, which splits off again, and it does that thing. But as a starting point, I was impressed with the variety of different things that people were bringing, that all seemed to be viable and effective.
All right. So, Mike, you've heard some of the stories, and Jay seems to be flopping in and out right now. So, what would you have expected out of this? And from what you hear, what are you shocked to hear that you didn't hear a lot of?
I expected to hear about more Hulks.
You too, babe.
I thought that somebody, like, more people would play just the one-man army Hulk, because that Hulk is really good. I also expected to hear about more green arrows from the gravity feed, because I think about, commons, and he, to me, stands out as probably the best one, just out of the whole group, really. Mm-hmm. So much damage delivery, so versatile, and the fact that he has those arrow tokens that you can then, use to take on amazing abilities, including shooting through walls. I was expecting to hear about more of him. I was really hoping to go. I was going to play Hat from Superman Wonder Woman with 100-point Thor, 100-point Scarlet Witch, both from AVX Starter. And what was the last piece on mine? I can't remember. God, terrible. Terrible. It was Doctor from the Flash set for the prob. And it basically was like a triple prob, little bit of pulse, and double pulse wave maneuver that I was going to pull. You know, relatively low stats, but overall kind of fun. I'm not sure whether it would have won or anything like that. I doubt it, actually, looking at Aubrey's team. I was a little surprised to see the combination that Aubrey came up with. Although, at this point, with the amount of Ant-Man action that we've seen going around, it's not... It's fairly obvious, you know, once he's got it up there, that it would work really well. I was glad to hear that Jay came in second. You know, winning the Blam always feels, well, winning an actual prize at one of these things always feels really, really good. I was thinking that I would, at some point, I'd like to run at least, you know, for one of the Wednesday tournaments, an uncommon challenge, just uncommon, with the same kind of set of rules as what you've put forward for the common challenge. Arya, fuck off. Pardon me, guys, sorry.
Lousy cat.
So sorry about my life.
It's
She was just chewing on the cord. I don't know. I was just disappointed I couldn't come. I had to be in Sarnia that day for 95th birthday. It's terrible as it sounds to regret not going to a tournament for our 95th birthday, because, you know, they only come around once in every 95 years for certain people.
I didn't even know you were that old.
I'm actually a year closer to that today, so I mean, there's.
That's true. You're pretty old now.
I don't know.
Well, technically, you're a day closer to that.
62 more to go. All right, Jay.
Well, there was the Hulk there. I brought it for my sideline as a joke.
Yeah, I want to point out that the second you put your sideline, I went over your team with a fine-tooth comb. It's like, just because you can, so can I.
There were 2 Green Arrows, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah,
Both of
I
them
think
went
so.
1 and 2, I might add.
I was surprised that there weren't 2 on the same team.
Anyway, sorry, Jay. What did you expect? What were you shocked not to see? And overall
I only
impressions?
turned off my mic, or my camera before I was on. I didn't anticipate seeing that much improved targeting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did, but not on those figures. Like Aiden using the original Avengers Iron Man, who also has improved targeting blocking. Didn't really anticipate seeing him. A lot of original Avengers, I guess. Well, there's a lot of empower and enhancement there, so it makes sense there. No one-man armies, as far as I saw, which is just surprising because just bring the Hulk, he would do well. Especially
The Hulk is kind of your only option in that respect, though, right? I mean, there are others, but certainly I don't think that very many of them hold up. I was really looking at just how many common options were there for a one-man army that really seemed viable, and the Hulk was kind of all I came up with.
The Iron Man could do okay.
Yeah, I think he'd fold, but yeah.
He'd hold his own for a little. There was a lot of Avengers initiative there, and then there was also a fair amount of stealth to be ignored. So, what else? There was more yo-yos than I would have expected between like the Captain America and then TKs, or well, yeah, in the top 4 there was Justice and the Captain America, and then we also had the 2 different Iron Mans with the awesome improved targeting. And then we saw 2 of the Hawkeyes between Patrick and myself. Then we also saw 2 iterations of the Ant-Man from Age of Ultron, of the Common, who is probably at 50 points one of my favorite figures from that set. just because of all his crazy, awesome utility. Like, at one point, making Iron Man a giant to be able to see over elevated to shoot somebody just below it was just, wow.
Yeah.
As is making characters tiny just be that much harder to hit from range, which was, there was mostly range there between different kinds of Hawkeyes and different Iron Mans and whatnot, so... Maybe Green Arrow is just not a figure that a lot of people have here, but, like... You'd think there would have been at least one or two more, just considering how strong he is.
You know what? I think it's less people taking the option and more or less people looking for an indomitable star figurehead to their army, which is kind of where I'm thinking if you put a lot of points in something like this into a character who's going to be doing most of your attacking, you kind of want to aim at a character who can do it twice in a row. And that's kind of the mentality some people get into. Now, granted, that's not necessarily the best one because, Jay, you made it in second place. I don't think you had a great deal of willpower in your team at all, except for, like, the Hawkeye. Or does that
the
Black
Hawkeye
Widow
has one click of it.
Yeah. So,
Black Widow gets it conditionally if she makes a close combat attack, but otherwise, yeah. Oh, and Bucky has it for what that matters, but he's not a major attacker. Until the point when he actually got 8 range from S.H.I.E.L.D. and Wildcard Avenger Initiative to shoot a character in stealth from 8 squares away, which was wonderful.
And what I did think was worth the mention because he missed you, he missed Tom as far as getting played against. And third place was Aiden Pilon, my ride there, nonetheless, a good friend of mine. He played the Fast Force Iron Man at 150 points. So he's like one figure off of Aubrey's team in that sense. But he went with the 100-point Hank Pym, the one holding the Ultron Skull. And Fitz on his team. So, of course, that gave him Henry. Henry was probably one of the figures I saw the most on teams as far as saturation. Tied with Atomica because somebody had 2 of her on his team. Jay.
Who was that? Well, that was the problem. It was I built Hawkeye first, and then I added a bunch of other stuff, then I put 1 Atomica. You have 25 points left. It was the only option.
I'm not bashing. I'm just
Although
saying.
I did feel bad using the contents of that starter twice.
Yeah. Now, there was one team that stood out to me that was really awesome, and I was so sad that he had to play against Aubrey, the guy who won in the 3rd round, because his team was just so fun-looking. And this was regular to the warehouse, Paul Puringer. I hope I got his last name right. His team was 3 Guardians, a Newsboy Legion, a hat, and Coldcast.
Yeah,
Now,
that is cool.
The 3 Guardians, of course, get the Quake, and you're thinking to yourself, well, what's Quake going to do? Quake, in Guardian sense, is going to give you an action token. As well, all 3 of those Guardians are going to have willpower, courtesy of the Newsboy Legion. And you have Hat and Coldcast to kind of throw them out there and get that Quake party started, if you will. That was a team I looked at and I fell in love with it from round 1. And he squeaked out some really, really close games in the first 2 rounds. So it was a team that wasn't going to win cleanly in any round. And of course, when it came across the team that won, he did get very handily destroyed. A lot of shout out to Aubrey on his team, but I knew Aubrey coming in was going to be using the Iron Man without a shadow of a doubt. Because when Aubrey wants to win, that Iron Man shows up with him. He plays it religiously, and he will win with it when he wants to win. And when he puts his foot down and says, I'm going to win. So, again, overall, everybody had a ton of fun. We are working on this as part of our Patreon project in the $800 mark. So it's way down the road. But we are going to. This is the format that we are working on, and I don't see any changes to it at this point. The only suggestion I've heard, I'm generally just going to put down to it's not the reason I made the format, because the most common, I'm just going to bring it up now, is the most common suggestion coming from several players is get the fast forces and the starter sets out of it. And it's what I want people to understand isn't so much that I'm taking out powerful characters. That's not the point of the format. The format is make readily available characters the only things used, so that the fast forces and the starter sets, they're on the shelf. Get them because they help you start the game. They're a good set of figures, and because they're sold the way they are, everybody's going to have them. So that's kind of why I put them in there. A lot of people use them, and because as well, sometimes if the current common trend is going, sometimes you need something that's kind of stands out to be pretty decent in the format. Because I don't want people struggling with just nothing but bad figures, especially if forward going, it's going to be nothing but non-complex figures. But on that note as well, as a judge, me and Amber noticed that we had very, very few questions that we had to answer because it seems that the common figures already are not that complex. I think at best we had to answer specific rules questions with regards to telekinesis or how a power functions. But otherwise, overall, it went very well. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Mike, I really wish you could have come out to enjoy it.
I guess one thing that you, even though I honestly, I don't suggest this because I believe it, because honestly I do think that the format is great as it is. But if you really wanted to double down on the idea of sticking only to common availability, to figures that are easy to come by, you might consider employing the Highlander rule, only to basically get around, for example, Jay's example of using more than one figure from the same fast forces. You wouldn't really readily ever get more than one fast forces under most circumstances, and the argument could be made that you're kind of paying double for it, and that for any figure that's relatively common, in order to get multiples of it, you still have to, pay in more. So the argument could be made that it's even truer to the the anti-pay-to-play. To employ a Highlander rule. That being said, I don't actually think the tournament will be any better as a result of it, so I don't think you need to, but it's worth consideration, maybe.
No. All right.
I mean, it would affect one of the top two teams, but
True.
I don't really see that being necessary at all.
I don't think so.
Just 'cause,
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, too, there's bound to be two friends building together, both of which have a starter set. One of which is like, hey, can I borrow your other one? And their friend might not be going in the same direction. So, I mean, ultimately, my idea is that almost everybody has a fast force and starter set, and you can borrow it from a friend because that's exactly what Jay did. Jay borrowed it from his buddy Manny. So,
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I would like to say that I noticed that a lot of just wacky ideas out there, and I don't think, the closest two teams came to being similar was Aiden and Aubrey having similar-ish Iron Man and having the Ant-Man. But still, not really that close a team.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, very few common game elements overall. I think I saw more than 3 copies of any figure besides maybe Atomica, just because I'm terrible.
Well, and like I said with my numbers, on the sheets there's 3 Henrys, 4 if you include Aiden's from his fits.
And that's a very, very small support character, so I can see why that would happen.
Here's something on my way out that I did notice. Mm-hmm. Enhancement was everywhere in this. Mm-hmm. Everybody, almost every team had some form of enhancement. If it wasn't Henry, it was Tom's 3 Hydra agents. There was a ton of enhancement because when it comes down to it, the commons aren't very full of perplex. There's a little bit of perplex with some characters here and there, but there's not a great gluttony of it or a great plethora of it, I think is the word I'm looking for. So you want to be increasing damage, so enhancement becomes kind of your go-to. And I think the reason Henry became a go-to for a lot of people is he gives enhancement and empower, so if your team gets stuck in close combat, they're still getting the +1 damage. So, enhancement was very, very, I couldn't go around the table saying, and because of enhancement, enhancement increases, enhancement plus, that was the most commonly uttered phrase, I think, in the tournament. Even the winners team had the Wasp with enhancement. So,
I also noticed that, in response to your mentioning rules, I think the only rules questions I ever had were just the basic rules of the game.
Right. Yep. The interaction powers.
So.
Yeah. All right. So, with that all said and done, I do want to take a second while my team gets ready for the next topic, which Tom came up with last week and unfortunately couldn't make it for Tuesday. I have a correction to make on myself on the patron hangout from last Friday because one of our patrons asked that mentioned that Mike had said 3 pulse waves with Mr. Spitlick, and I wasn't of right mind or whatever. I didn't think it all the way through as far as how he can get off 3 pulse waves. So I went on and said might not be correct because he is the most frequently corrected person on this show. So I immediately went in that direction. And I was incorrect in that assessment because what was failed to mention to me, or what they failed to mention in the question, was he had mentioned Blind Owl, who would pop Mr. Mix's Pitlick onto a second click, and then from there on the third turn you can have Mr. Mix's Pitlick choose Colossal, use Colossal Stamina, and take his 3rd Pulse Wave. So again, this is when we do the patron hangout, I get kind of in a rush and want to answer the questions, but I also want to take a lot of time to answer them, but not a lot of time to think about it for some reason. So if you were watching that, yes, I have to say I'm sorry I got that a little wrong, and I apologize to Mike, even though he is still the most corrected person on the show.
It's like a backhanded compliment.
Well, I mean, come on.
No, that's not a compliment.
But you see where I'm coming from.
Right, it's just not one.
It's not a compliment at all.
It's a backhand there.
Sorry, backhanded apology.
It was a clarification. I'm not apologizing to Mike at all.
You're a jerk.
I am. I'm the biggest jerk.
I'm
No,
gonna give you your birthday beats when I see you next.
you know what? You'd just be adding. I don't know if you can see the bruising there.
Just blends in with all the hair.
All right. Now, Jason has something coming up in his life, so he does have to duck out a little early. So he's going to address Tom's question first, but first we're going to let Tom ask the question, then we're going to let Jay answer it.
All right. So my question that I wanted to just bring up on the lab was just thoughts on that anyone might have on what they wish they had been told when they started playing Heroclix. We all come at it from different places. We all come at the game with different expectations, and a lot of times we come into it with different senses of where we're going to go. But this is already a game that takes a long time to learn, and a lot of times it takes a very long time before you really come to grips with some relatively straightforward pieces of logic that you just wish that someone had told you when you first sat down, and it would have changed your whole perspective on the game earlier. So, yeah. What advice, not so much what advice you'd give, but what do you wish you'd been told when you started playing Heroclix was what I wanted to know.
All right. And I'm going to let Jay take the lead on this one.
That is a good question.
Thank you.
I think, and I think it's actually more relevant today than it was at the time, because I know that when I came out, my first tournament was Galactic Guardian Sealed.
Mm-hmm.
And my first game was against Tom, so that was fun. And a particular figure that came out of that set was Chase Thanos, who is not exactly the most difficult figure to pilot once you learn the absolute essentials of the game. So I would have to say that the advice would have to be not to start off with figures that play themselves. Because that's just not really learning how to play the game. And I feel that, like today, like especially with the previously mentioned Hulk, who doesn't exactly require much knowledge of the game or strategy or anything besides just use charge and use the powers and count squares and roll some dice. And just if that's what you're gonna play, it's not exactly gonna teach you how to play the game. And I would say the same goes with figures that stay in the starting area but can still attack, because you're not learning positioning of how to move your figures while getting attacks, while also positioning properly and not getting retaliated against. And just going for the strategy that means you can't be retaliated on at all is just not really the best way to go about learning how to play this game. Especially with just like a lot of stuff that is out now. And while there are a lot of really strong figures that are competitive, that are there and that you can use and win with, it's not necessarily going to be the best thing to learn how to really play this game in depth and strategically.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. That was the most politically correct way I could say that.
You did a good job.
All right.
And with that, I will have to go because I have to get up at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
All right.
We appreciate you joining us for the short time, Jay. And life is important, so we will carry on without you. But don't forget, Jay, practice makes your team better.
I actually didn't practice my team at all, so there you go.
And it would have been first if you would have
There
practiced.
you go. You see?
No, it literally would
Ah.
Just saying is all.
I don't know. I did better than you.
I judged. I won.
I still did better than you.
Mm.
Okay,
So
see ya.
with that,
All right.
I'm trying to kick me out of here, Mike. Fine, bye.
Have a good night, Jay. Thanks for being. All right. With that said, Mike.
I disagree with Jay. I think that.
Yeah, of course you fight the guy when he's not on camera.
No, I even said it in our chat over here. You know that.
Money where your mouth is.
No, I think starting with
doesn't count.
I think starting with simple stuff to pilot is a really good way to go. I remember when I started, I actually ignored team abilities on dials because it's just that extra level of complexity that I didn't really want to have to deal with at that point. And it wasn't until Drake said, "What are you doing?" That's where some of the points go, and I started really using them. Yeah, I mean, starting with less figures and working your way up to more figures is a really good way to kind of start the game. But also, like things like little catchphrases like "rule of three" would have been helpful. You know, rule of three, and then replace, then modify. That's a rule, unless you're using pulse wave. Just having all the little catchphrases in mind when I started would have been really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about my early story so many times at this point. I had a great start. I don't know. I think that I just by pure destiny, I happened to start playing with a bunch of very understanding, careful, patient players that allowed me to just, I guess, build up slowly. Although rather quickly when I really think about it. I'm an obsessive person, though. I think the most important thing to do when you start playing this game is play it all the time, because it really is a sport, and you're only going to get better. You're going to get to know the game a lot better when you play it a lot, but also you're only going to get better as a result. I know many players who leave for various reasons for a couple months or for work or school or whatever, and they come back and they're really rusty for a while. And there aren't too many board games like that or other tabletop games like that. Although Magic the Gathering, you have to, I guess, would be something that this game gets compared to sometimes, although very different. Would have a similar thing happen too. Part of it is because new sets come out every couple months, right? And so your knowledge base needs to be continually updated. And part of that is that when a new set comes out, yeah, you look at all the dials, but you got to try out a good majority of the figures to really know what is going to work and what isn't going to work. I think if someone was to warn me early on, they would say, best game ever, but very expensive, potentially. So be careful. That wouldn't have done anything for me, though. I would have gotten into it anyway. And I guess my word of advice to the newcomer would be that the social aspect of the game is just as important to getting better at it as the rules are. Because the stronger your support network is for learning a game, the stronger your game will be as a result.
Yeah. All right.
I feel like I need to. Ooh, I'm hearing an echo.
It's coming from Mike's.
Oh, okay. I feel like I need to.
Booming voice coming up theirs.
I feel like I need to defend Jay's position a little bit, since I think that what he was getting at wasn't so much don't play with simple figures. I think what he was getting at was don't get locked into those as your go-to. But too much in the early part of the game. I mean, they're useful to get the basics. Simpler figures are better for getting the absolute basics of just how the game is played down. But as you start to play more, branch out into other things rather than being intimidated by things that are more complicated and sticking back with simpler things. I think that that's what he was getting at, because basically you gloss right over learning the underlying mechanics and the more complex mechanical interactions if you don't get into some of the less, shall we say, straightforward figures. Within the first little bit of playing, because the first few months that you're playing will dictate the experience you'll have with the game from that point forward. And anything that you find that you just don't, people will often quickly decide they don't have a taste for a certain thing, and then will take a long time to look back at it, and they'll be worse as a result. So that if they're locked into only playing relatively point-and-click sort of figures, they may get to the point where they simply are too far along in their playing to feel comfortable branching out into a direction with some less efficient figures and really trying to learn the basic mechanics. It's kind of like if you're learning how to play an instrument. I can speak to learning to play the piano. I always resented having to do all of my scales and all of the mechanical work, and as a result, I definitely put all my effort into learning songs, and quickly discovered I didn't have the technique to back it up when I started playing songs that were advanced enough to need it, and it was a lot harder to learn the technique later than it would have been just to slog with it earlier. So, I mean, I understand. I think that you both make a good point, because I think that your counterpoint is very good, that simpler figures are a good way to get the basics of the game down.
Yeah.
But once you start to get the command of the basics of the game, be willing to leave them behind, even if it does mean sometimes playing things that in the short run won't work as well for you. At least that's what I feel Jay would say if he were here and wanted to articulate his counter-argument.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I think that I guess that leads me to think about, his start versus my start as well, and I wonder if he started playing at home first, buying stuff, playing at home with some friends.
I think so.
Learning in that way. See, I never did that. I jumped right in.
I mean, I played against him in his first tournament, he said, and apparently the first game in his first tournament, and I know at least he knew the basics when he came out,
right?
Because I wasn't teaching him the game. Really, we were clarifying things, but he obviously came in with some kind of knowledge base.
Right. Yeah, I did the opposite. I played in a tournament when I knew nothing. Yeah. Different starts.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tom. Answer your question.
Answer my own question. The one thing that I have to keep, I'm going to affect a fake accent here. The one thing that I have
Jason's Jamaican accent? Sorry. That thing is the worst. Sorry to cut you off.
Why didn't you know me Jamaican accent, man?
That's like Scottish, like Iranian. I don't know.
You need to get out and actually listen to people, man. Because I think your assessment of my accent is actually terrible.
Maybe. Anyway, let's stop cutting off Tom. Go on, Tom.
I was just going to say that a thing that I have to continue telling myself, and to me it is kind of the most important thing that you can impress upon somebody when they first start playing, particularly if they're going to be playing in tournaments and so forth, and try to take the game seriously, is to remember that it's a game of points. I feel like that's a point that you can make to almost anybody, but it is especially important to hammer into people early, because when you first start playing the game, there is a tendency to think, I need to take my team and beat my opponent's team with it, and to gear your whole strategy around trying to KO everyone on the other side of the board.
That's
and I mean,
how it is. Yeah.
Jay made the point earlier that in the finals of this tournament this weekend against a player who's been playing for many years and is very good, and he had the advantage. And chose to still chase after the rest of his team rather than laying back and forcing Jay to come across. And it is one of those things where it's instinctual in us. And we come in. It is so easy to come in with the belief that the objective is to KO my opponent's team. And once the groundwork of that is laid, it is very hard to wriggle out of it. Now, of course, as you get further and further along, doing well in tournaments does mean earning the most points in the tournament. So winning is the first priority, but getting the most points is a close second, because you can win all the games you want with very few points and you will not advance, or at least you won't get to the finals or whatever if other people are also winning a lot and earning more points. So I appreciate that it's not simply a question of winning, just getting a few points and then riding that to victory. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is to, at all times, when you have a choice between sacrificing your capacity to be ahead versus trying to get a few more points, it is better to err on the side that keeps you ahead and try to play that long game. Because getting points is a game of points, and ultimately winning means getting the most points, not KOing your entire opponent's force, unless they're playing a one-man army. And so that, to me, that is a piece of advice that I would say is important to give to people who are new to the game, just to set them on the track of considering what the real objective of a game of Heroclix is. And it's a point-scoring game. So that would be a piece of advice I wish that I had been given when I first started playing, because to this day I still tend to want to round it out. And admittedly, in a social setting, when you're just playing casual clicks, it is more fun to play it in such a way that you try to take out your opponent's team. But when the time comes to really care about your placement, it can be hard to switch gears. And I think that that's a trap that you can fall into at any time, and one that it would be nice to guide people away from earlier.
Yeah. Well, as far as advice that you could have given me from day 2 of the game being out, I don't know if there was anybody there to give me advice. But if I was to go back in time and tell that guy something, don't get comfortable with the rules, because you've got a couple years before they find their place. As well, there's going to be a space in the game. Keep your stuff. Some of it you might need still. As far as I felt like I've kind of adapted to this game very well, because if you've ever heard my backstory, you know that I did come from a background in Warhammer. I actually worked for the company Games Workshop, which required a great deal of knowledge of the game and the product. So Warhammer is a lot more complex than Heroclix. So if you think we got a complex game in Heroclix, go play some Warhammer for a couple years. Learn everything in Warhammer, because you're going to feel stupid very quickly.
But I already do.
Yeah. So now when I came into this game, I felt like it was a simplified version of it, and it's kind of maintained that until they started adding the special powers, or rather added cards to figures, and that's where the game kind of changed. Anyway, so if I was to go back and tell myself something in the past, it'd be adapt, and adapt more, because honestly, I still play strategies from 13 years ago thinking they're still viable. And I've really got to kind of leave it. But at the same time, more often than not, I catch so many people off guard with that style of play that it gives me this illusion of being, a good, viable strategy. And I gotta tell myself in the past, or tell myself now, it's okay to leave something behind or change gears. I feel that I've been getting better with that more often, but I think ultimately I've got to learn, or got to get the advice of patience, be a little bit more patient at best. And I've admitted that in an article I wrote on Majestics. I've admitted it on this channel several times. If there's a weakness I have, it's patience, and I'm working on it, I swear. It's advice everybody has given me except for me, and if I was to go back and get that piece of advice to me, be patient. Everything's going to come to you. Let the game end in time. Just play well. Just focus on playing well. And I think one of the biggest problems is, like I say, playing for as long as I have, and I think Tom called me out on it very, very carefully, is that I've been playing this game for so long that I can see what's going on the board, and I've already got the math figured out, and it's either going to happen. And Patrick is calling me out. This is not an AA meeting. Patrick, nobody could give me advice. I've been in the game since day 2. Nobody had advice for me. Oh man, but yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's a hard thing for me to look back and give myself advice, because I've been with the game, I've adapted with the game, been there, watched it grow. If I was to personally give a new player advice, it would be start with the powers. Keep it simple. If you see a special power, just leave that character aside for now. Learn that, and then start diving into everything else. But that's just learning the rules. If you're trying to learn how to be a competitive player, I do videos on that. And just change your
There's
thinking.
also, if we're allowed to make one more point, there's one other thing that occurred to me, which I think would be this is both a piece of advice that I wish I'd been given, but also a piece of advice that I wish I could give to everybody who's new to playing the game, which is that if you're really interested in the game and you listen to a lot of podcasts and streams where people yammer on about Heroclix and stuff like this one here right now, there'll be a lot of people asking, what kind of a player are you, or what type of teams do you like to build? Do you like tentpole teams? Do you like swarm teams, and so forth? Don't be too quick to decide where you live in that landscape. You've got to play the field, you've got to play everything, and honestly, I don't think that anyone can ever really truly say, this is my thing. This is where my head's at any given point. It would be closer to it. The best way to be a good player is try to play as many different things as you can, and don't be too quick to just dismiss strategies that perhaps you don't have a lot of experience with or you don't understand as things that aren't your areas of strength. They're only not your areas of strength because you haven't necessarily given them the chance to be. You'll get more enjoyment in the long term out of the game by trying to do better with things you're not comfortable with than simply trying to do the best you can with what you are.
Yeah. And one of those things, when you mention that, is oftentimes we come to Jay as a swarm player. I am not a swarm player. I am most successful with swarms. I have attempted every single strategy in the game, even some that just that are just nonsense.
Yes.
So I've come up with the losing strategies. I've tried the winning strategies, and some of them I've been successful with. Some of them I just can't adapt to, or just don't have that mindset for, or the patience for in some cases. Again, something I'm working on. So yeah, like Tom said, don't let yourself get caught in that. Try it all. And where this game kind of wins over Warhammer is that because I get a pack, and I might have a tentpole in that pack, and I might have a bunch of swarmy characters in those packs, I get the chance to try it all. Whereas in Warhammer, it's like you've committed to an army from the get-go, right? Mm-hmm. And that was something I had to adapt out of very quickly, because I was an orc and a Tyranid player, and those who Warhammer know that I like a lot of things on the board.
Yeah, there's nothing better than Swarm or nothing better than Sealed that'll teach you how to play the variety that is the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, and I oftentimes talk about how I'm, I need to learn how to use I need to learn more or different strategies within the game, I wasn't used to using Swarm very often, but then I think about, for instance, the Age of Ultron tournament series that we had this past summer, and I won almost entirely with Swarm. It's just getting into Sealed in the beginning is a really good thing to do.
Sealed is the best way to play as far as, testing your skills in conjunction with being able to kind of, take it easy. I don't think you get so emotionally invested in your team when you just built it 10 minutes ago. And sometimes one of the things that can be a negative experience in a play setting is when you either lose or when you beat somebody and they are greatly disenchanted because of the fact that they've gotten so tied up in their team and everything that they wanted to achieve with it, and if it didn't happen, or if it happens to you, it can absolutely happen to you as well, where you have all these thoughts about what you expect to be able to do, and then when it doesn't work out, you get really bummed. You can really get bummed out, and other people can get bummed out when their teams don't work the way that they want to, and a lot of it is because they've gotten this emotional connection with the team over the course of carefully constructing it. In Sealed, you don't get that experience, so losing isn't usually as negative an experience, but playing tends to just be a more positive and enlightening and enjoyable experience, and winning is a thrilling one. So it's great.
Oh, yeah.
Sealed's awesome.
And teaching team building, we've already kind of touched on it, but having 5 minutes to create a team from 2 booster packs can be a little bit frustrating and intense and fun, and it really shows. Yeah, it's just good.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm. And before I carry on my point, I just got to remind fans, if you're watching right now, go to Married with Clicks or Facebook.com/MarriedWithClicks and comment on the post where you followed for the link or the link to this video, because there's no comments available on YouTube if you want to add questions or topics, because that's where we're going to be going to next after we kind of wrap up on this. But also, when you said sealed and play sealed is a good way to learn learn in general. It is no mistake that pretty much every single collectible game arranges to have sealed tournaments when their new sets come out, and even their pre-release, no game that's collectible doesn't have a pre-release. Well, of course, pre-releases have to be sealed, but they all come in and say sealed, so you get a chance to try everything with the set, or have to step out of your comfort zone with the set. So you just gotta get a feel for it. It's no accident that every single game does that, and it is a good chance once you've learned the rules at the kitchen table, and you want to take them to a competitive play table, go in sealed first, go in draft first. Not only because it's a level playing field, but also because you get to learn, like Tom and Mike stressed, brand new things to have to try. I'm not comfortable 100% of the time with tentpole teams, but my most successful War of Light came courtesy of the Weaponer of Cord. And I never played him less than full points. So, yeah. Anything else we want to talk about on the show before we move on to fan questions?
I think that we had another best figure question, didn't we?
We did, actually, and I had the team prepare theirs and I got to find the question again, because, believe it or not, for some reason I used the window that I had questions up on to start browsing for things on HC Realms. I always have this thing where, like, I have to double check something in HC Realms, but and I always have one window open with all the questions that we had, and end up, using that window to hunt for things. So, with that said, let's go in chronological order, I guess, as I am off to do. Oh, and we're going to actually answer Rick Sasser's question first before we go in chronological order, and that actually is the first question. So since Mike and I are on the same page, a favorite common with Hat, what's y'all's favorite modern uncommon piece? This comes from Rick Sasser. Let's have Mike, because he mentioned you in the comment. What is your favorite modern uncommon piece?
Weaponer of Cord. I don't know if he's my absolute favorite, but I've used him to great effect. My first Nationals team last year was a Weaponer of Cord tentpole team. I didn't pull him in sealed, actually, for the entirety of that tournament series. Oh no, actually I did once, but it wasn't at my home store. But yeah, no, fantastic, really great for the points. As we saw in the pre-show, he is just crazy. Although the pre-show, that was mainly bad dice, I'd have to say.
But that's the thing, is the Weaponer was still alive on that last click. So don't just say the dice. He was still alive. Tom still had to kill him.
Yeah.
He healed up twice over the course of the game. So
that's true. Yeah, so Weaponer of Quard's pretty awesome. Isn't New Red Tornado also uncommon?
She is.
She is.
She's pretty tremendous too. All right. Anyway, go on.
All right, Tom.
All right. Weaponer of Quard is 211 points at full value. My favorite uncommon is 198 points cheaper. My favorite uncommon is 13 points. Making her the cheapest non-single click piece, and Jason is doing his best impression of her right at the moment. It is Blind Al from the Deadpool set. Do I really need to talk about this? Okay, I will. Blind Al is what I love, without going into too great length, because I do blather. But generally speaking, pieces in this game that you get fulfill one of a few fairly broad roles within a given team. They can be tentpole attackers, they can be primary attackers, secondary, tertiary attackers, support pieces, frontline leaders if they've got a bit of support, as well as secondary attack power and stuff. You can categorize things in various different buckets. And then you've got pieces that just fall into a fairly general bucket of niche figures. And they are specific. They have specific function in specific scenarios, And when you get figures like that, the best thing they can be is either very inexpensive or very good at doing something other than just their niche. And in the case of Blind Owl, she's very inexpensive, and she perfectly fits the niche of what you need. She can get any piece with an activation click going by just kicking them in the butt and kicking them out of the starting area. You get a free advancement of at least 1 square when you do that, and you also get onto your second click without having to take any kind of an action to get there. Activation clicks have been a reality of this game since Infinity Challenge. They have been around forever, and we are used to having a figure that if you need to get onto click 2, then expect them to be able to do something as of turn 4. And over time, there have been various ways around it, and everybody who remembers the hooker bomb will recall that. But as far as I'm concerned, there's just never been a better, more efficient, effective way to do it than to pay a mere 13 points to knock somebody out of your starting area and get them off their activation click. But the great thing about it is that's not all she does. Because there is an increasing number of strategies that involve staying in your starting area, she's a pretty... honestly, you get a steal at 13 points as far as protecting people who are in your starting area. You get the ability to perplex them up if they haven't already been perplexed, and you get the ability to boot people out of the... boot opposing characters out of the starting zone if they come and try to get them. One of my favorite moments in Heroclix that I've ever been a part of, I didn't even participate in. It was the finals in the Windsor Rock last year, in which I saw, I think it was Adam Bolt, use a Blind Owl to knock Dr. Brother Voodoo Prime off his first click, and then set him up into position for further attacks and retaliation by the rest of the team because Blind Owl was there. Just take out action to do it. I love the fact that that 13-point figure not only took the edge off one of the most powerful figures, one of the most sort of overused figures of the game at the time, but also set them up for additional punishment from the rest of his team. What a great investment of 13 points. She's stealthy so that she's, even though it's easy to just say, oh, she's 3 points for your opponent, it's not that easy. They have to get across the whole board and deal with her stealth if they really want to do it. And if they happen to have to get into your starting area, then she'll knock them right back out again, and they will feel silly because they just took damage that they couldn't roll out of from a 13-point figure. I love Blind Owl. I can't say enough good things about her, and I think that she makes a fantastic addition to the game at only 13 points.
Mine is only 27 points more than yours. And he's recent, and he only makes my soldier teams better. That's General Lane.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
Mad love with that character.
Yeah, he's great in general.
Yes, because I mean, outside of a soldier team, at 40 points, able to share the Superman enemy team ability basically gives your team outwit unless Blind Owl is on your team or Henry's on your team. I mean, there's not a whole lot of figures in the world that aren't getting outwit from that. Even if they are 40 points, they get outwit from him. He also comes with enhancement on top of that, the PD team ability, and willpower, so you don't feel guilty about having to move him a second time in a row to keep up with somebody who might be moving way ahead of him and you need that extra damage coming out of. That said, add him on top of a soldier team, which I do frequently build, if you know me at all. His leadership turns all of your characters into lower point characters than him. So for 40 points, you get the added ability to potentially remove an action token from a character who has no business getting leadership roles from him. So all in all, General Lane for me has added an element to a team that I've already been building for years. It's very tactical, likes to stick together, and just generally gets better because of it. A team that has 1,000 leadership roles already coming out of it. Because if you've ever seen most soldier teams, there's about 5 or 6 characters that will have leadership, and just adding to the collection of characters that can remove action tokens from other characters is pretty fantastic, if you ask me. So yeah, I've fallen in mad love with General Lane. That's not to say that he's the only uncommon I really like, but right now he is definitely standing out as one of my favorites as far as a lot of the builds that I have been coming up with. So
yeah, he is.
Go ahead.
Just saying, yeah, he is really good.
He is. He is indeed really good. Now, the next one is another lengthy one that I wanted to address right now. Come on. My mouse doesn't want me to apparently... Oh, here we go. All right. So Obi-Wan Chris
Yeah.
Regular contributor says, happy birthday, Jason. Thank you. Yes, it is my 33rd birthday today. Would like to hear some advice on clock management. I went 0-3 with a team I worked on for 2 weeks yesterday, and in 2 of those games I was in a position to wipe, but instead lost both matches at time. The other one I needed one more turn to KO Nick Fury, but final action was called, and I lost that one 5-0 because of giving up 5 points for using an ID card. So I have a lot to learn, and I want to be a better player. So here's my team for what it's worth. Okay, so I do have the team here for a quick analysis on it. His team was the Fast Forces Mercy at 50 points, a Shield Space Rig, Nighthawk Prime, Mr. Mix's Pitlick, 25-point Pizarro, 25-point Atomica, 100-point Coriander, 30-point Despotellus, and he had a Nova ID card and a Thor ID card. So this is a 400-point team, so there's like 100 points extra of what we usually handle on this. But just as a quick analysis, there's a lot going on with the team, and that's already a clock management nightmare. For yourself, because when your team is that big, you've got to pay attention to a lot of things that are going on. I don't see a great deal going on so much as the beginning of the turn, but in general, from what you have, there's a lot going on out of a single action. There's probs coming out of places, perplexes coming out of places, and then you have ID cards adding into the complexity of your team. And because of the complexity, you have a lot going on, and that means you need to do damage frequently and big. Like, you have to kill something almost immediately. Now, you have Coriander to do that, which is ultimately your goal, but, I mean, if you're playing against teams like the Nick Fury, they're going to hang back and let your Coriander come to you, which, of course, Coriander is going to take it from a Nick Fury very hard. As well, you are already kind of off-kilter because a lot of, like, I think Mercy, Bizarro, Atomica, and Despotellus. Now, it's 4 characters, and I think combined have 10 clicks. And a lot of those are going to get one shot by characters that are 75 points or less. So you're like, and it looked like for the most part you were losing with 0-point losses. These things are very low point losses, which do occur, but you do kind of have to mitigate the point loss. Be aware of it, and part of the clock management is when you have a team this big, you've got to move a little faster. Like somebody like me who does have very short turns with teams that also happen to have very short turns would probably be able to pilot this in a matter of speaking very quickly. But when you get more characters, you get less time to think because you have more things to do. That's kind of where I'm coming from this. Tom, what are your thoughts on it?
I have a few thoughts. First of all, I mean, there's a difference, obviously, between clock management as far as you're concerned and as far as the person across the table from you is concerned. And if there's a concern is arising that not only are you having a hard time playing quickly, but also the person across the table from you maybe is taking a long time, there's not much you can do about the latter other than being able to, you can call a judge over and be like, he's stalling. It's a bit of a jerk move. One thing you can try to do, however, is lead by example. The natural tendency of human beings is to kind of take on the energy of those around them. This is what I like to call the live theater effect, because this, well, first of all, I will work in live theater, and also audiences will tend to all kind of play off each other's energy. So if there's a generally positive energy in the room, it will only tend to get better and better. And that translates across the table such that if one player is playing decisively and quickly, then the other player will often ape that behavior, even if it's outside their comfort zone, because we just try to kind of match up our energies with the person across the table. I know it sounds very spiritual, but it actually is kind of true, I find. And so yeah, it is psychological, and you can use that to your advantage. If you find that your opponent is taking too long, then try to take quick turns, or at the very least, very decisive turns, so that at the very least, if they are obviously playing differently, if they become aware of it. Now that's a bit of a side note too. That's how you manage. That's one method of managing the person across the table from you being slow. As far as your own clock management is concerned, one thing I find extremely helpful, especially when I put together a team that is complicated, which is a lot of times, frankly, I sit down. I open up an Excel file and create a grid that is 16 by 24. I create starting zones. I put little letters to represent my characters, and I create tabs called Setup, Turn 1, Turn 2, Turn 3, Turn 4, and come up with about maybe 3 or 4 different deployments for the first 3 to 4 turns. There's kind of the Alpha Strike deployment, there's the defensive deployment, there's the modern deployment, and whatever caters towards the type of team that I'm playing. But just start to come up with a few different ideas. When we talk about practice makes your team better, the best way to do this is to actually practice with the team. But this assumes that you have a limited capacity to practice. Most of us do. You can practice on your own terms, both sitting on the table moving figures around, or doing it electronically at work during your lunch break, if it so pleases you. But come up with a few fairly basic deployment concepts and some general trends, and figure out what are the things that you have to remember. What are the things that every turn you're going to say, at the beginning of my turn, I do the following. So they start to become a little bit more like second nature, and you can focus on the specifics to what you're doing in this game against this opponent, catering some of your sort of autopilot activities to direct them into this game, as opposed to having to remember them in the first place. So figure out what are the things you're always going to be doing a small variation of, and try to make them second nature to you. I think that's useful. It helps to be able to speed up the way that you deploy, so that you're not always sitting down looking at the map and thinking, how am I going to deploy my team, but rather which of my team deployments best suits the scenario, and how might I modify it to make it work. That's my general piece of advice. It just, it comes from trying to play faster, but I think a good way of doing that is get to know your team well and get a sort of a short list of things you have to remember and strategies you might employ, so that you're working off that, as opposed to trying to come up with your deployment and your strategy from whole cloth in that moment at the table.
All right, Mike.
I echo a lot of what Tom was saying, but also, excuse me, sorry. In a 400-point game, you are going to come up against some people who are playing 250-point characters, plus another 100-point character, plus 50 points of support. So playing a bunch of little tiny things that you have to track constantly means that you're going to be playing your team, not the game, most of the time. And then they're going to have these heavy hitters that can come in and wipe out any member of your team in one hit. So remembering that the 400-point game is different than the 300-point game is really, really crucial. So many characters that you normally couldn't play, like you could see a King Thor, for instance, in a 400-point game, and have to fight that nastiness. Or full points Darkseid from Slosh, 350-point Darkseid. Like that's madness for the little tiny dinky characters to even be able to hit. I can see what you were doing with your team. You've got most of the general mechanics of the game included in that team, and so it's really cool because you're experiencing all these different aspects of the game, but try and reduce the sheer number of effects that you're trying to control at once, because you will forget about things. And once you start forgetting about things and you realize that you've forgotten them, you're in the regret zone, and you've put yourself on tilt before your opponent ever has even attacked you once. So realistically, having a team that you're comfortable enough with to be able to manage your teams accordingly, or your turns accordingly, is the first step. Second step is realizing where you are. That's pretty much it. You stop that.
It's my chicken pot pie.
No, Arya, you get out of here.
All right. So hopefully the three of us have managed to bang our heads together enough to give you the advice that you need to kind of deal with whatever your team needs to deal with regards to managing the clock and being aware of the time that you have. That said, Chris Stockhouse, there it is. Boom, stamp of approval. Starts with, he's actually got his thing numbered here, so there's 3 parts to this. First one is Happy Birthday, Jason. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Happy birthday, Jason.
Number 2, and I only want yes or no's on this one. Are you guys? No.
Sorry, you cut out. You'll need to ask again.
Sorry. Are you going to see Star Wars this weekend?
Yes.
Mike?
Maybe.
Okay. Third, have you guys been following the conversation happening with Justin Zirin from Comics Shenanigans? This is where he needed a few more numbers on this. I am very excited about the Ninja Turtles being modern, and I'm even okay with there being Ninja Turtle con pieces. I'm not okay with the huge delay on the new rulebook and what seems to be the end of the product replacement and printed plays. So, do you guys think the president of the game we all enjoy and spend a lot of time playing and talking about is helping or hurting with the answers he has been giving? Until next time, gentlemen. Okay. So, I've been following the thing from Comic Shenanigans because it's run by a podcast, run by a few locals. Mike, have you been following it?
Oh, yeah.
Tom, you've been following it?
I have not caught up in the Justin Zirin stuff because it's basically what I'm doing tomorrow at work, although I do follow Comic Shenanigans. It's a great little podcast, and everybody should follow it. I think they talk about all kinds of stuff, largely comic-based, but occasionally Heroclix as well. And, yeah, it's run by some very great guys. Well, Adam Chapman and people.
Yeah, Adam Chapman, you said, yeah. Yep. So, with that said, I think I want to go direct. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to Cole's notes the answers because he does give a fairly lengthy answer that sounds like it's not 100% his. Now, my understanding is with these licensing things comes a lot of licensing rules, and I want to use a word that is not very nice. So it's bullpucky will be the word that I want to use in place of the word that I can use. And unfortunately, part of the bullpucky that they're getting comes from a company that is very protective of their licensing, and that is one Mr. Disney. Disney owns Marvel, and as a result, they get a little tight with their licensing properties. And for a long time, Warner Bros. Was the guy that we'd have to be worried about with that. But now it's looking like Disney's becoming the enemy as far as things. Now, I'm not saying the enemy in general. Anyway, long and the short of it is they're going to have to curb print and play because of some kind of licensing agreement that I'm not privy to, that Mr. Justin Zirin says, we kind of have to do, otherwise we're going to lose these licenses. And I kind of have to take that at face value. Now, and that's kind of the subtext I read into his answer. Like when he said, "Believe me, this is for the best for all involved," that's kind of him saying, "Look, if you want to keep seeing this product, we're not allowed to do this anymore," or something to that degree. And I'll take that without panicking. As far as the product replacement, this is where we run into the fan versus the corporation, and unfortunately what you see versus what they see are two different things altogether. And because they're at the seller level, they only hear what they're told about, which means they'll only hear about the bad things. But also the bad things get compared on these numbers, and these numbers are how many of these figures they've sent away. Now, when 50 people say, like between 5 and 50 we'll say, hey, I've got broken figures, but they sent out 1 billion figures, let's say, 50 figures barely registers as a percentage. And that's kind of the answer he's giving us as far as we're going to stop. We are not really doing product replacement because the numbers are acceptable. And yeah, as far as how many figures they come out with and how many people we hear about with things, if you actually count the number of people who are talking about these problems, at a high level, that unfortunately seems like it's not that much. But it hurts us because when you're the person that gets it, that's painful, right? Because like, well, now I have a figure that I want to bring to a tournament, but I can't bring to a tournament. And it's something we end up having to deal with to a certain degree, and it's unfortunate because WizKit's packaging, and this is one of the few complaints I have about the company, is some of the worst as far as the gravity feeds or even Dice Masters is concerned. Because Dice Masters is a game that's cards and dice. You open those packs, those cards are bent, and if you come from a card game perspective, where I come from a background of Magic the Gathering and Versus, if I got every single pack with bent cards, there would be some kind of noise coming from this bald boy over here. It would be unacceptable. But unfortunately, because of the nature of the game, the way Dice Masters is concerned, that it doesn't really factor or change the functionality of the game.
You dropped out, eh?
Okay. With is that Mike drop out?
Yeah, Mike dropped out, but he'll be back, he said.
Okay.
So yeah,
He's upstairs.
Yeah, he's upstairs in the same building as Tom. They're kind of sharing the same Canadian internet, so it's like sharing half of a ham sandwich between two really big people.
It's true. We are big people.
Very, very costly as far as internet output is concerned. So yeah, on my long rant, we unfortunately are talking to Justin Zirin, who when you look at where he is in the company compared to when he started with the company, his place is way up here, and his place is primarily in numbers, but as far as the CEO is concerned, he's actually got a lot of contact with the fans, which is more than we get from a number crunching CEO in most cases. So I do appreciate the fact that he's taking the time to answer these questions. And unfortunately, that answer, as far as a big corporation, it hurts to not get the product replacement plan. But as far as acceptable numbers, I mean, if you got to look at it from his point of view. I sent out 1 billion things. 50 of them weren't so good. I sent out 1 billion though, man. I mean, like, that's a small amount. That's pretty acceptable. So yes, at our end, damn, does it ever suck to have some messed up products every so often. But as far as the numbers are concerned, it's unfortunately, and nobody's gonna like my answer on this. It's where they're coming from makes some sense. Is that all the points? And yes, Ninja Turtle's cool. But yes, I also agree with the rulebook thing. Why I don't understand why we can't keep this thing up to date, because if like we got the same product, same company with Dice Masters coming out with something in every set, and I think I went on a rant on this last week. Like if one, maybe even two, I don't know if Attack Wing still only has the one starter, but if one product is able to consistently change the rules and release a new book, what Dice Masters and Heroclix rulebook that's really causing this problem is what I'm deeply interested in. Tom.
Again, I haven't listened to it, so I don't really want to be able to comment too much. I agree with most of what you said.
It's an email written thing, just so there's not much to listen to.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't have a lot to dovetail off of there. I agree with most of what you've said. To be perfectly honest, again, I also don't want to be unpopular on the internet, but as far as the figure replacement thing goes, maybe it's just because I've always had a bit of a happy-go-lucky nature to my being, but it's never bothered me that much. I mean, I have thousands of Heroclix at this point, I believe, certainly hundreds, and probably more than 1,000. If one of them is not right, then that's pretty good odds. It's never bothered me a great deal, and I get the feeling, even though I have no way to corroborate this, that it's probably a lot more work to maintain than it really pays back in dividends as far as goodwill is concerned, because as long as there's been a figure replacement system, the only thing I've ever heard is complaints about how it works. So, I mean, if everybody is dissatisfied with it anyway, the amount of how much more can they invest into it when it sounds like they're probably a little bit overstretched to service the, frankly, fairly small portion of their total output that really requires attention in that way. So again, sorry to be unpopular on the interweb, but I agree with you in that sense. It never really has bothered me very much. I've been impacted just like anybody else has, but with a couple of misprinted figures or things over time, but it happens. It sucks, but it happens, and that's life. And I don't feel like WizKids needs to bend themselves over backwards to accommodate me in that respect, if it's going to be a draw on their resources that will take away from them doing more gross good as far as the game is concerned. The rule book, again, I completely agree with you on. I don't really understand why there can't be either a living electronic document that is better curated, or a physical document more often. But I like to think that there's reasons. I tend to give credit, or give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure there are reasons behind it, but only to a certain extent can you kind of deal with what the excuses you're not hearing. And I don't think that particular element of the game is being very well supported. But
like I said, I want to know why Dice Master does it and not HeroClix, right? That would be a fantastic answer to get. I mean, if I would have known they were asking for questions on this, that would have been mine.
But all in all, I mean, yeah, that's about all I have to say. I mostly agree with what you had to say. I more than anything else, I'm glad that he's willing to be communicative in this respect. A lot of companies don't have the time or inclination to be, especially when they're not big enough to just hire somebody to be a pure figurehead for them, which I don't suspect that WizKids is. So I'll reserve making a deeper judgment until I've had a chance to fully catch myself up. But in short, sounds like it's nice that he's being a part of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I like his involvement at this point. Is that right away is kind of awesome. I mean, as you said before, nobody has to. I mean, if I was the president of WizKids, I don't know if I'd have time.
Uh-oh. I think Mike's Skyping out on us. I actually think we're getting it from Tom's microphone. He's speaking loud enough.
Yeah, I think he might be. I think that you might be as well to an extent, unless it's me.
I'm not hearing an echo at my end. So.
What's that?
You said if I worked for as big a company as Justin Zurin, and then that was it. Oh, I think the internet is dumping on your computer.
This is really frustrating.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yes, you're delayed a little.
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying if I was president of WizKids, I those questions. I may not have time or interest to really relate to people on that level. That way, that's pretty special and awesome. The rule
Not really.
thing
You're breaking up quite a bit.
really bothers me.
Yeah, rule book thing really bothers you? Ugh. Mike, it might
Providing
be beneficial
that you can still hear me okay, Mike's going to try coming downstairs.
Yeah, all right.
That's really frustrating.
Yeah. Maybe he's emitting something because you just walked into the room and then the camera just went bleh.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Hey.
Hey.
Hi. So what I was saying before is that did I get through the president thing? Did you hear all that?
Yeah, if you were the president, you wouldn't be able to do that, and we
Well,
got that.
time, blah blah blah. So the rule book thing really bugs me because it makes in a I guess a bigger picture sense, it takes away from the learning experience just for newcomers getting into this game because they have changed so much since the last rule book was released with all the erratas and everything else and changing for instance, just the character sizes alone, that a new pack and a new rule book just seems in order at this point. Yeah. And so yes, if it was an electronic document, that would be tremendous. Heck, get Glenn to do it. He could do that. That'd be a great thing for Glenn to do. If anybody doesn't know, Glenn is a local judge here who's actually an orange on HC Realms as well, and is an amazingly knowledgeable person and generally a fun guy to play with. So yeah, there's that. The fact that the Ninja Turtles will be modern makes me very happy. Very happy. I love the Ninja Turtles, like my childhood nostalgic. Just funny bone gets going there. I'm really, really looking forward to this set. I'm going to buy a lot of it. Not that there's going to be a tremendous amount of it anyway. I'm predicting that Donatello is going to be meta.
He's going to be meta because I'm going to be playing him, and you're all going to have to suffer regardless of how good he is.
I don't know if that'll make him meta necessarily, Jason.
Oh, I'm making him meta. I made the police captain meta.
Well done, sir. Well done. You and General Lane.
I made 10th anniversary promotion meta.
Whoa, dude, you are
amazing.
No, I'm kidding. But I'm going to force feed it into my teams. I don't care.
Well, you just did. Was there any other aspect of that people were asking about? Like, was there
product
anything
placement
else?
and print and play.
I really like my Goliath that's Machine Man and my Headless Red Hulk. They are two of my favorite pieces that never get played. I'm not that concerned. The odd piece that comes mangled or what have you, I think we can all suck it up at that point. And many venues, if you go to a sealed and you open that, they will replace that booster. 401 Games here in Toronto does that. So they make sure when you open each booster one at a time. Jesus. You're a weirdo. Oh, man. Oh, I'm going to beat Donnie with Shredder now. You've just ruined it for me. And Craig. Okay. So, yeah, the 401 Games, for instance, has you open up each booster one at a time and then check the dials versus the actual list number to make sure that they're all correct. Because if they're incorrect, they will replace that booster. They're pretty cool that way. Yeah. I think that answers everything.
All right.
I'm going to take...
Yeah, let's see how long we can get the external mic and external speakers out, because that way Tom can
Tom is not participating. Yeah.
With that said, all right, I'm gonna try to volume. All right, Adam Matthews. Oh, by the way, Chris, thank you for your question. And yeah,
Thanks, Chris.
sorry we couldn't jump on the bandwagon of hate, but I mean, let them kind of run how things are. I wouldn't mind an answer on the rulebook thing, like a solid answer. Anyway, Adam Matthews. So I just saw the Nick Fury episode of Metafix, and there is one thing that can counter him not mentioned, and that's giving him Battle Fury. I know of only two figures that can do it, and that is Shriek from Guardians of the Galaxy and the Wrath Chase from the Trinity War set. I want to pair up Shriek and some Weapon X scientists. Yeah, this is one of those things that I've been getting a lot of comments on, and I'm going to discuss in a second. I want to pair up Shriek and some Weapon X scientists from Deadpool and a Hydra Wolverine and see how that goes. My question is, if any of you Metal Lab guys were to do this method, who would you use on your team? Thanks. All right, let's start with Mike on this one.
Wrath. Did you hear me there?
Yeah, no, I heard your Wrath.
Wrath.
Yeah.
He gives people Battle Fury. That works. Yeah, Wrath, Shriek. I started making a team like this a little while ago, actually. Wrath, Shriek, and I can't remember who else I had with it. But yeah, I mean, those are the first two that come to mind anyway.
Agreed. Right. If the whole idea is just to give them Battle Fury, then I agree. If you're not playing Golden, you can't play the Unspoken, then rock on Firstborn.
Okay. Now, the reason I didn't mention him specifically in my episode is a couple of reasons. One, Shriek will depend on the map, because you need to win the map roll in that case, because hers doesn't require a line of fire, which is cool, so you can do it across a wall, but you need a wall in the way between her and Shriek and him, because all he'll do is turn around and cancel Shriek's power. It comes from her movement power, unfortunately. So, and even if you give him Battle Fury, that doesn't stop him from taking a free action at his range to cancel that power. Right?
It's also not as if he only gets his bonus damage and penetrating effect on range combat. I mean, he is obviously a range beast, but giving him Battle Fury just changes the way that you play against him. It's true that it's a good way to get a leg up, but it's not like it's a hard counter to what he does.
Yeah. And then
well, I mean, you can always play Shriek with Blackout, and then you've got that kind of.
Where I was also going with that is you also got to count on Nick Fury not having 180 points of something that has 3 damage to get rid of some kind of wall in the way to deal with that, right?
Exactly. And Shriek plus Blackout, you're already into it for 200 points.
Yeah. So and then when you go into Wrath, 117 points, what are you backing him up with? Because Nick Fury, if he ends up being the highest point character in your team, Nick Fury says bye-bye to your Invincible and then deals 4 damage, 5 damage with a Henry. If you happen to be building a Fitz, take an action with Fitz. I got 6 damage, Wrath is dead. right?
Well,
So, I mean, yes, these are really cool strategies, but unfortunately, the figures on themselves don't have enough strategies around them to make them the answer. As well with the Meta Lab, one of the things I wanted to do is try to keep people thinking on their own. And a lot of people brought up this Battle Fury thing. Give him Battle Fury or get Battle Fury to get around the shape change. And while these are great ideas, there's not enough consistency in that. Or, you know, the other problem with Shriek is the only people she doesn't give Battle Fury to are characters with maximum carnage as their keyword. So, you know, all of a sudden you have to rely on your own team being pretty close combat-y. And, you know, Shrieks is a 6 range. She's going to get shot on the way in if you haven't won the map roll. And Shield, a Spy, and Soldier on Nick Fury are 3 keywords that he can build sizable teams and pretty much count on map rolls over a lot of Shriek, who has maximum carnage, and Monster as a keyword. Monster kind of, it's still there, but it dipped a little when that Mole Man left, and like while there's still some great characters with the Monster keyword, none of them really stand out as I'm going to make this great. I mean, there's zombies that are good, and you do rely on getting the first shot. And one of my patrons who has been getting some advice from me has pointed out one Monster keyword character, but there's a problem with him as well. And then you know, Shriek, if she gets hit, she takes it. I mean, she doesn't have a whole lot of damage reduction on her end, right? So, I mean, this is why specifically I try to avoid naming specific characters. Why if I go for a strategy, it can't be too limited. So when I say try to stop him from having lines of fire drawn to the characters, that's more reliable than this this Battle Fury strategy, because that works on more than just Nick Fury, right? And while the Battle Fury is good against Nick Fury, some of these characters just will die to other things on the board. As well, I also don't see Nick Fury as as big of a threat as people seem to be giving him credit for, because I think there was 1 or 2 of them in the last top 8 of a super qualifier for The Rock. So again, this is when I make Metafix, I am promoting thinking, and a lot of people are thinking, and then they're questioning some of my decisions, which is okay. You're allowed to do that because that's a goal. That, yes, that Loki is part of the can't be drawn, lines of fire can't be drawn thing. And then I know I specifically cited Black Panther because of something on his ability that makes it work over stealth. So anyway, I went into great length about why I said what I said, and I appreciate people challenging me on it. That's okay. You're allowed to do that, but now you know why I didn't specifically go into detail on those particular characters, because while they're good, it's not really stopping him. As long as I see nodding at the other end, I'm content that what I said was.
I just think there's a better, you know, like what you were saying before, that like Loki is the best anti-Nick Fury.
Absolutely.
Pretty much out there.
You know, not only because it's anti-Nick Fury, but it's anti a lot of things, except for Mystical and Deity and Asgardian, I think.
Which are pretty common anyway, but he's still really good even if they can draw lines of fire.
Yeah, because as well, Loki is also a good character. And those theme teams aren't bringing Nick Fury. So now it comes to what's the rest of your team makeup versus on that. And I think he takes up 115 points, and he still adds prob. He still has super senses, some decent stats, and mind control.
Shape change, super senses, sidestep.
He's incredibly difficult to get a handle on.
Incapacitate.
Even with line of fire serves, where I was going with that.
Yeah.
So Fabricio Granados, hello and happy day to you all. Now I'm quite lost regarding Rainbow Raider. I know his effect is good, and he doesn't have bad numbers on his dial length, so he's got good numbers and he's got good dial length. But I keep hearing he's broken, but no one explains what he's done or teams that work and make him broken. So he wants to be enlightened, if you will. Also very happy with our Road to Worlds this Sunday and eager to pull. Fabricio comes from Costa Rica, and they do have one of the Road to World WizKids Opens, and that's really good news that they're getting more international with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he's looking for advice as regards to Rainbow Raider. So Rainbow Raider is good. Yes, you're correct. His numbers are all right. His dial is okay. Where people see Rainbow Raider is in his trait, where you can give him a power action and pick a color from the rainbow. So red, orange, yellow. I believe it's light blue, dark blue in place of
I've got it in
indigo.
front of me here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purple and that's it, I think. Yeah.
And green.
And green. Sorry.
Not lime.
Yeah. Now, what you do is you pick that color, and every character on your opponent's force that has a power with those colors will have -1 to the combat values. That is a really good thing if your opponent has a lot of a common power. As well, there's a great deal of red in the game right now between super senses, blaze claws and fangs, flurry, and range combat expert showing up a lot. Green shows up a great deal between energy shield, charge, super strength, enhancement nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to possess these standard powers for this to kind of function the way it does. So, but what'll happen is if one character in the opponent's force has it, it's great. If more than one have it on your opposing force, that's even better. Would I call it broken? No, but it's good. And people who will call it broken have 4 characters with energy shield and lost -1 to all their stats on all their characters.
Or they were playing a big time 10-pole or a one-man army and got a significant drop. And I mean, it is a very 10-pole heavy, always will be, because again, that is kind of an easy go-to on a lot of cases.
Yep.
And there are ways that you can kind of stack that effect. Well, you can't stack the effect, although I guess you could actually if you play more than one. But I was thinking more so, you can amplify that effect. Nighthawk Prime is a one that works with him, so that you can't do anything to get those stats back. So you can't go up, but you have to go down. That little combination that costs less than half of your team can really be a nerfing factor. And we've gone on this show before, and I certainly have spoken very passionately about the fact that there are certain game effects that more so than others tend to create a negative play experience. I use this quite a lot. And I usually come back to the idea that it's when you are taking something away from your opponent, you're playing more into the realm of negative play experience, as opposed to just giving yourself something more. Ways you can get better is either you give yourself more, or you take something away from an opponent. People find that taking away is really quite negative about it. It kind of hurts their ability to enjoy the game they're having. And Rainbow Raider is a prime example of that. Well, he's not a prime, but he's a classic example of that. Whereby when you're saying to your opponent that now all of their stats are dropped, and especially if you're teaming up with like a Nighthawk Prime where they can't go back up again, it's really quite annoying, because as opposed to you just can't play your team the way you want to, and it creates a kind of a bad play experience for you. So it is one of those pieces that creates more negative sentiment than others. And so when people call it broken, I don't think it's broken. I think that that's probably a reaction to the fact that it is potent in a way that you feel negatively about, as opposed to actually being unbalanced in some way. That's the way I would put it. It doesn't feel unbalanced, but it does detract from your enjoyment of the game. Mike?
I mean, it's like you're in my brain, man.
I am. I'm right behind you.
You're speaking behind me, so I feel like I'm talking, but I'm not.
You are kind of perched on his shoulder, so I mean, dressing bright green.
He's my parrot.
Yes.
My personal parrot.
Brock, Rainbow Raider's good, Brock. Native play experience, Brock.
Okay, so that combination of Rainbow Raider and Nighthawk Prime is pretty broken. But individually, they're dealable. I mean, Nighthawk Prime is crazy. But individually, they're dealable, and if you just want to put Rainbow Raider on his own, he's going to get targeted very quickly anyway. So he won't be a problem for very long. And if you're not used to having your stats modified negatively by someone else, you should get used to it, because it's going to happen forever. So, yeah, no, he's fine. 68 points, pretty accurate. I do feel like he could have been 135 points with better stats and maybe be a little bit more usable or less usable, actually, as a result, depending. there's nothing else that really stands out about him. I mean, he doesn't have ignores hindering. He just has, for movement, he only has ignores elevated, which is still pretty good. But I think the example we were talking about, though, was really from Jimmy at our Winamap, because he had Nick Fury, Nighthawk, Prime, Rainbow Raider, Lockjaw, with a Hulkbuster part and Pim Particles and a Spider Bot. So that particular combination was particularly broken, if you want to call it broken, or very potent in general.
Well, the argument could also be made, in terms of the broken question, the argument could be made that his effect has the potential to be twice as useful, 3 times as useful, 4 times as useful, 5 times as useful for no additional points, depending upon what he's across the table from. And we are used to having to build around certain things, but never before have we had to worry about not duplicating colors on the pieces that we're building with. And so it takes a bit of getting used to think maybe that's something we need to take into consideration. And so
I've never played against Zero in the Tester.
Okay, fair point. But
he's right there.
You know what I mean. It's not something, well, you wouldn't have really been getting that effect in the modern game anyway, right?
Right.
That effect is only just higher point values. So the point being, if you could make an argument for it being broken, it may simply be that he is the sort of figure that potentially can't do anything with that effect. At that point, no argument can be made for him being broken. But if you've got a team of 5 guys and they're all -1 to all their combat values because of 1 power action, yeah, it does feel a bit broken.
Yeah.
By design, it feels like it has the potential for it to go kind of off the rails. But it's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And is it red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet? He's definitely 7 clicks.
Yep.
It's a clever little dial when they did that.
That's pretty long, actually, for his.
68 points is pretty hefty, especially in the modern game. I mean, if we were talking about Infinity Challenge, I had 8-click figures at 35 points, but those games never ended.
It was a different time.
It was a totally different time. Nowadays, the dials are half as long, but the characters are half as out, or have like 3 times the output. So they kind of went squish and came out the top of the tube. But yeah, like Tom was saying, your build could end up being what made him better. Which is, that could be pretty ruthless. So yeah, when people say broken, when you look at minimal effect for maximum output on the min-max scale, his is a fluctuating scale based on what he's up against, and that's hard to predict. I see where people are coming from, but it's one of those things. When I used to play Magic the Gathering professionally, and I was teaching a new player how to compete, I turned to him and said, "You need to play against blue for about a month, because you're going to run into blue and you're going to cry about it, and I don't want to hear it." And this is one of those things that we're getting into with Heroclix, as the game has a bigger and bigger and bigger competitive field. We have to find our blue, our thing that we have to deal with. And it happens to be stopping your opponent from having as good a field as they have with minimal work. And that is characters like Nighthawk Prime, characters like Rainbow Raider. Just get ready to not have everything on your team. Like Mike was saying, I'm kind of echoing that in deeper details. It's time to start looking at things from a perspective of what happens if I have nothing. Can I still go? Mike has started echoing something I've been saying to a lot of players as we're practicing. Practice on ranks, because you no longer move as well as you do. Practice playing against maps that you wouldn't ideally pick. I built a team with Phantom X and Arcade, and guess what? When I lose map roll, I just flat out lose. That's you have to start. One of the when we say practice makes your team better, one of the elements that you need to start practicing is taking something that you think is going to be great and look at that situation like, I'm not going to run into it, but put yourself in that situation, because believe it or not, that situation will arise, and it's time to be ready to work around that. Sorry, I overspoke as I was hunting for extra questions to see if we had anything else, but it doesn't look like we have very much more going on. So thank you guys who did put in your questions. We really appreciate the input. As we're getting into holiday season, we're going to need more and more of your input because we're going to have less and less information to talk about. And we don't want to give away too much of what we're practicing because then that defeats the purpose. But Mike, before I cap off the ad read, you want to talk about what's going on at the Wizards Cache this week?
Yeah, this week at the Wizards Cache on Wednesday, we have a 300-point Silver Age tournament. It's a little bit different. Basically, build your best that you can within the Silver Age requirements, which are no BFCs or feats on carded characters. And we are playing with relics, but no resources this week. That's just for this week. And basically, what you're trying to do is build your best, most broken team that's relatively simple, because you're actually going to be sitting down across from somebody and handing them your team to play. So whenever you sit down to a new round, you have your team with you. You hand it over to the other team or the other player, and you play against each other with each other's team. If you build a crap team, you will be punished by a twist that will be revealed at the end of the tournament.
To say nothing of the fact that this type of tournament survives a lot based on goodwill. So this is a good, fun game of goodwill. This particular time, maybe don't try to overthink the rule. Just have have a little bit of goodwill to your opposing players and have a little bit of fun. Really build something that you think could be super good, and don't try to kind of surreptitiously get in there underneath the wire by designing something that's really good, but only if you know 9 characters with a really specific way of deploying them, and some of them are from 10 years ago and people have never seen before.
Yeah, exactly. Something that people are going to be able to pick up immediately and play with. So, for instance, I'll share my team with you right now. Oh crap! Where did I put it? I'm going to be bringing for someone else to play Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, with the shield construct on him, Ophidian, Mr. Mixes Pitlick, and the Eye of Agamotto relic. So it's going to be really fun. It's fairly straightforward. You are going to be using a few different aspects of the game, like there's a little bit of possession. There's also a relic to be used, and a couple, relatively meta figures. Relatively, they're very meta figures. And that'll be for you to beat me with. So yeah, I do encourage people to come down. As usual, everybody gets a prize. So, it's really about goodwill and having a good time. On Friday as well, we're going to be running another tournament. Glenn and myself, Glenn I mentioned earlier in the program, is another judge at Wizards Cache. We're going to be running a holiday spectacular. And we're entitling it, He Knows When You're Sleeping, which is pretty creepy, really. And for this tournament, you build a 300 modern team and bring and no resources, I believe. I can't remember whether it was listed that or not. But also, when you get there, you will be given an Abominable Snowman, which is this month's OP kit figure. You get to keep him, and you get to play with him on that team. Plus, he doesn't break theme. So, in fact, he adds to it. He's basically a theme wildcard. So you can, because that'll bring your point total up to 450, you could get up to 5 theme probs for that team. There's also going to be a scenario element involved that does have a Santa going across and spanking bad little kids.
And remember that he gives adjacent characters action tokens, so bring out your ragdolls and Despotalises.
There you go, Despotali. Oh, viruses. Despotalians.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun this week. Also, we'll be providing eggnog and cookies on Friday. So yeah, come on down. I know we're competing with the new Star Wars movie, but
yeah, well, they won't have eggnog.
You can't avoid the crowds by going another day.
Like Saturday afternoon when I'm going. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. Anyway,
I think I'm going like next month. I'm going to be dodging.
Avoid the internet for a while. Avoid the internet.
whatever. If they put something as big as Luke or Vader as Luke's father in the first of the new trilogy,
Hey, spoilers.
You know what? I think there's 30 years plus is past the expiry date on spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to. I think at this point I'm allowed to.
Are you going to tell me that Rosebud was the sled next?
You know what? Bruce Willis was dead. There, I did it. That's more than a decade, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I know. I see dead people too.
We're right here for spoiling all of that.
Yeah.
All right. That said, before I go into the exit, we had 2 questions sneak in, so let's address them. I don't think they'll be too long. Brandon Parker, how viable do you think the 008 Hulk at 250 points is in the 300 limited format? And what's with the 400 limited alternative? Is that for venue determined? That last part I can answer very simply. Yes, it is up to the venue to determine whether or not they're following the 300 or the 400 point limited, because it is alternative versus regular. But I believe they will still count for ROC points and everything like that if you follow those 2 formats. There's another rock format that is not specific to that. I think it's like the silver or the rock age one that won't allow the points to transfer. But viability of the 250 point Hulk, it's viable. I mean, it's just, you know, it's going to take some work to do. I saw 250 point Hulk played with a split lip and Book of Skulls. So if you can do something to that kind of effect on your team, yeah, it might work. But you got to be patient with it, and you got to be very careful about the way your moves work, and you got to be careful of outdoor maps because those new giant rules will really have an effect on them. So what do you guys think?
Agreed. I don't know that the other 50 points you're getting will give you that much benefit. If you can get an Avenger in there to at least get a little bit of a bonus of map, still a pretty good chance you'll lose. And unfortunately, the new rules do hurt Giants pretty badly. And so he became a lot less viable when those new rules came out. I think he is awesome. I know that his stats at 250 are considerably better than his stats at 200. But for the difference of 2 clicks, I feel like you might just want to pack your Age of Ultron movie Scarlet Witch and then worry about rounding out the other 45 points. You have a better chance of getting a theme team with more characters that way, and she can make up for the drop in stats and do more for your team than those 2 clicks would do. So if you really want to use that Hulk, I would say use him at 200 with the Scarlet Witch rather than 250 and you can't afford her. Otherwise, he's great. Like, he's a super good piece. But again, another one of those pieces whose stock was hurt a little bit by Nick Fury, because once he hits that first stop click, that even though you can't counter or ignore that stop click, you sure can just say you can't use it, and then you can blow right past the second one. So you gotta be careful with him. I think that he's a little less viable than he could be if it weren't for the change in giant rules and the existence of Nick. But hey, I think that there's few pieces that will be more fun than just throwing that guy across the field at your opponent. So I mean, if you're gaming your way to trying to win at all costs, then I might not consider it so closely. But if you want to have a good time and still have a fighting chance, then I'll bet you could build something cool with it.
Yeah, he's pretty vulnerable to a lot of things. I love the big numbers. It's very tempting to play with. I mean, I play him in casual. I try and stick to casual and build something a little bit better, I guess, well-rounded for competitive play. Yeah, he's got huge stats, but you know, all it really takes is one good hit to take him down to crappier stats, and then once again, as Tom was saying, you know, versus Nick Fury, he's not that good.
And actually, now that I think about it, I realize I'm not even looking at the right Hulk, because his stop click is a counterable power anyway. It can't be ignored, but it can be countered. So you hit it the first time, you counter it, and then you blast right by it the second time.
Yeah.
Very annoying.
And his, I mean, the Avengers Initiative on him, it's kind of a waste, isn't it?
It is a little bit of a waste.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit less of a waste, I suppose, if you get makes his pit licked into a smaller size, but other than that, not a lot of real usefulness. For what, if you happen to give him range or something from a Hulkbuster arm, then it might be of some small benefit. Honestly, at 250 points, I think that the starter one is actually a better option. I'm surprised to be saying that, because I do think the main set is a better option at 300 and 200, but at 250 specifically, I love full movement charge, and he has to go quite a bit deeper before he hits a stop click. You can also push the starter one onto a second click if you can immediately see that your opponent deals penetrating damage so that you get the benefit of the invincible. You don't have to be indomitable. Go ahead and take your full movement charge and choose to push so that you wind up on a better defensive click. You still got another 50 points to work with. He's basically got the same keywords, and he has a series of consecutive stop clicks that might turn him on to a big-time monster click. So honestly, at 250, I think he's the better piece, even if I prefer the main set one at the lower and higher values respectively.
All right. With that said, our sponsor, Patrick Iboko, has a question for us. He wants to know,
Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick, for all your support, by the way. We do appreciate it. He wants to know, when is the next Rock Super Qualifier or higher that we are attending? He demands the Metal Lab make a showing in the U.S. Well, I know I'm going at least on a solo adventure. I'm planning a solo adventure to Majestics, the regional, myself. Anybody
How dare you leave our team base?
You know what? You guys, they put me on the solo adventure and they realize I take one click at a time because of the beard. Honestly, if I could get the scratch together, I would definitely sponsor the entire team the whole way.
And when is that?
What's that?
March.
That's in March?
That I believe March or April. I have to double check because it's on the listing of events that we did receive a little while ago. So yes, I am planning a trip myself to Majestics. Any of the guys that want to join me, if you can get the money together, by all means, come and join me. I'm about halfway there. Happy birthday to me. We have Christmas coming. Hopefully, I'll be the other half of the way there. Fingers crossed on that one. It is April 16th. I just got the confirmation from Patrick. 16th and the 17th.
Wonderful.
So I got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I hold on to that plane ticket for that weekend, and fingers crossed that I can make it out there.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to go as well to that one. That's I think that's the next on my list as well.
Yeah.
Just come to.
Well,
Yeah, maybe.
If there's anything within driving distance on a weekend I'm free, then I'll certainly take it. And in this case, driving distance can be quite a long drive. I really don't mind.
We could go to New Jersey.
Sure,
I was gonna suggest possibly going to New Jersey. I've heard Kenny has been asking us to get out there.
Yeah.
So I'm
When is
not
that?
sure. There was a Catskills tournament. I believe it's about a 4-hour drive away. I was like, oh, it's in New Jersey. It shouldn't be that. What do you mean it's 4 hours away from Jersey or something? It's like 4 hours from Buffalo, I think. So I think Buffalo is about an hour and a half. So we're looking at about 5.5 hours. A little longer than Ottawa or Windsor, but
Hey, if I'm free, I don't mind driving an awfully long way. I love road clicks and
Oh, there it is.
road clicks tripping.
yep. Which is one of the advantages of being part of a team. For those of you who read my article on Majestics Apex Insiders, check it out. Anyway, so yes, Patrick, we're coming. We're coming. Just let the Christmas season be done, man. Because I got 3 kids, man. They want gifts. Santa's expecting a trip down to my balcony.
When are they gonna get jobs, dude? Seriously.
You know what? I tried to get the modeling jobs. It's like, we got enough twins, and mine would probably trash the place anyway. My daughter looked too cute, or rather looked as cute as the rest of all the other things they had at the modeling agency. So we tried. We tried to pay for the college ahead of time.
Your daughter, come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now she's already a bit of a diva, so we don't need her
there's
to
a Wins Kids Open on February 20th at Highlander Games in Jersey.
I'm a definite tentative maybe on that at best.
Well,
Mostly because we have
don't be so specific.
Well, let's go, Tom.
I'm trying to remember if we have a show that day. If we don't, then I can probably do it.
all right. So yes, as you see, we are making our trip arrangements right now. In fact, you got some of the live touches of that. But in the meantime, guys, I want to thank everybody for joining us on the show today. I also want to thank our sponsors, hcrealms.com. Always use it as your #1 Heroclix utility as far as the unit section, the forums for discussion. And while you're there, click the shop button, go directly to realmsgaming.com. Find some of the cool Heroclix paraphernalia that they have there, including such things as dice cups, hats, side bags, T-shirts, etc. And on your way out in the checkout section, in the coupon section, put in the coupon code MARRIED for 10% off of your purchase. As well, hcatlas.com, for an awesome monthly custom map. $25 a month gets you a subscription, and you will get one cool map each month. This month, it is the Nashville Zombie Apocalypse. Very, very cool, exciting idea. Can't wait to get a look at it. We are hoping to have it on the show shortly. As well, we're brought to you in part by MajesticCCG.com. Check out their premium site, the same thing, MajesticCCG.com/Apex-Insiders. Sign up for a premium account for $3 a month. You get access to very awesome articles written by some really great players, including Easton Brock, Mike Payne, Paris Gordon, Patrick Iboko himself, Kevin Afruz, and some not so great players, including Jason Collins, who writes some really meaty articles every so often. I just recently had a great one, a well-received one regarding the advantages of being part of a team. As well, if you want to support us directly, patreon.com/marriedwithclicks. Our next goal is a practice night show at the $200 mark where we have to give away some of our secrets as far as thinking, as far as some team planning. You'll get to watch some of our teams that we scrap or some of the teams that we put through the gauntlet. Honestly, guys, the direction of the show is going to be very difficult, but we are planning it, and we are in the midst of working together for it. We're looking forward to it happening. In fact, as well, the Money Where Your Mouth Is matches, which we've recently funded, me and Mike will promise to film it this week. Either, Mike, are we good for tomorrow for filming?
Yeah.
All right, we're filming it tomorrow.
Come over.
That's, again, patreon.com/marriedwithclicks. See if you want to support us directly. All kinds of cool stuff that you can get through that. Of course, I want to thank Mike and Tom for being on the show. It's been a long one. It is almost midnight, and it is time for us to sign off. So when you're watching the Meta Lab, watching Metafix, always remember our motto: practice
Makes your
team
better.
Have a good night, folks. Thanks for joining us. Good night.